Isolated and interview continue. We're going to head to Rita today with Dean McKenzie. And Dean, this week we've seen a little bit of progress. Obviously, the word from the government coming from level 4 to level 3, and that means that you have been able to put out a proposed a racing calendar. Can you just give us a little bit more information about that?
Yeah. So, good morning. Firstly, Aidan. Yeah, on Tuesday the draft calendar was put out for the period to the end of the season. So the reason why that had to be redone, just to state the obvious to a degree, is that with COVID obviously decimating the domestic scene, what we've had to do is redo the calendar for the remainder of the year and take into account obviously the period of the animals have had away from training and those types of impacts on welfare and training, as well as of course the obvious about the actual safety protocols and all that type of thing. So the draft calendar that came out on Tuesday incorporates a lot of that, all of that, and ensures that we, with the green light from government around the protocols, which I'm sure we'll touch on, gets us back racing as soon as we can. So the first step in that would be greyhounds in May, towards the early May. Harness towards the end of May, and then thoroughbreds back in line into July. So, fingers crossed that all come together, but that's out for consultation now with the codes, with the wider industry. The codes have obviously been heavily involved in that, and the principles of that calendar are very much around ensuring safety of the participants and the like, and reducing risk. So, as I think we've talked about before, those meetings are scheduled to take place close to the horse supply, the dog supply, the participant spaces, to reduce travel and even minimise the risks of cleaning the venue and all those types of things. When you centralise it into those fewer venues, you reduce a lot of those types of issues as well. So anyway, that's out for consultation. That closes Tuesday. So hopefully with that green light around the protocols, we can firm up that pretty quickly after Tuesday and get that information back out to industry.
So that, Dean, I guess that leads us on to the trialling and getting back into the training, back onto the race courses and utilising those public facilities as well. What's the word on the next step along that path?
Look, there's been an enormous amount of work done by a lot of very good people over the last few weeks, and in particular the last few days, to advance the back to work protocols, so to speak, to get us back to work as soon as we can. And we're, it's 10:07 on Friday morning when we're recording this. It is in real time that we'll get some advice on that. Thoroughbreds are pending at the moment, and hopefully that information will come through shortly, that those protocols have been signed off by government. And harness and greyhound are also in the works, and we're obviously hoping over the long weekend that we can get all those tidied up so everyone knows that they can get back into work on Tuesday officially. Obviously, the industry has been given the okay for participants to prepare to go back to work, so that was certainly the first positive step in that process. But just to state the obvious, our industry is very much aligned with the same process as every other industry in the country. And of course, there's hundreds of industries looking to get back to work as soon as they possibly can, and as is no different. So, we've been very fortunate that the existing relationships that we've had with the Department of Internal Affairs, who have coordinated the intergovernment response and discussions for us have been very fruitful and beneficial to us. So, we've certainly shortened that timeline as much as we possibly can. But, the back to work's the first step. Obviously, the back to racing is the second step. So the process was very, as you would think, there was a lot of common sense driven into that, and that we needed to get people back to work before we can get back to racing. Potentially, greyhounds may be the only code that races in the level 3 alert period. But of course, that's obviously also up in the air. So hopefully those back to racing protocols, which are a separate set of documents and procedures, will also be signed off in the very near future, and we can get obviously that first race meeting back underway in May, as we've got in the dates calendar. But again, green lights yet to be given. Hopefully by the time people are watching this, there's already been media alerts around the thoroughbred situation, and then hopefully the harness and greyhound are very, very close behind that.
So it's May at the earliest with the greyhounds. We get into harness, and then into July before we get thoroughbred racing ongoing. What about costs and stakes? Can you provide any assurance to participants in the sport?
Yeah, look, there's no underestimating the size of the impact on the TAB business and the wider industry that COVID's had. We're all pretty familiar with the impact that it's had. It's not pretty. What I will say is that the TAB is still functioning in a commercially viable way. We're still turning over $26 million a week now, effectively being with trackside being run from a couple of desktops at home and a bit of number 8 wire. So the basis of the TAB business is a very good one. It always has been. It's been around 50 something, 60 years. So we need to keep that in the context of the challenge that we've got. Yes, to answer your question, costs will need to be continually revisited. I think we put some comms around out to the industry last weekend around some of the initiatives that we've already undertaken that you and I have also talked about previously. But that's, as I've also said previously, that's ongoing. That won't stop today. It won't stop tomorrow. It won't stop next week. There's some hard decisions to be made by everyone in the industry, and from club level right through to the TAB business. So, we're certainly not going to shy away from them. I think some of the things that we've already had to undertake, that there's been some hard decisions already made, and they will continue to be addressed, and we won't be shying away from those. The stakes and distributions issue is a more complex one than perhaps may first appear on paper. So distributions to the industry effectively profits from the TAB. And effectively, the word profit is a relevant one in this context, in that obviously over the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, with no domestic racing and 80 to 90% of sport effectively closed down, the costs of the business have outweighed the revenue. So it's a pretty simple concept. When you're spending more money than you're getting, even though you've done your best to reduce those costs, then there's no profit to distribute. So once we get the domestic racing scene back going, which of course we've already covered through the dates calendar and the back to work and those type of issues, then we can actually start to generate some more revenue. Once we start to generate some more revenue, then we can start to talk about how we distribute that. And then obviously the stakes discussion, which the stakes are paid for by the codes. So the codes decide what stakes they pay, etc. So our job at RETA or the TAB is to maximise the profits and distribute that to the code, so then they pay the stake levels that they believe are most appropriate for their sports. So the reason why it gets a little bit more complex certainly at the moment is that the scene around revenue for us as a TAB/wagering operator is very uncertain. We've got no sport going. We don't know when sport is going to resume. Example, NRL. Hopefully the NRL is back at the end of May, but already there's talk that might be June. So at best, you could describe that outlook as very uncertain. Likewise, for the domestic industry, we're only in the void at the moment of trying to understand if we can get back to work. So the first step is to get back to work. The next step is to trial. The third step is to race. Once we know we can do those things, we can actually start to generate some revenue, get it around that dates calendar that's also draft at the moment. That's still out there for consultation and could still change. So we've got to wait for that to be confirmed until we can then actually sit down and model a finalised version of what revenue we can generate from it. So what I can say to everyone is that this week, our team has sat down with the code finance people and worked through modelling around how that may look if the dates calendar is confirmed and we can start to generate some of this revenue that we talk about, so that we can actually understand what we can then distribute out, and then accordingly the codes can pay in stake money. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg, and I know it's probably not a simple answer as everyone would like, but that's the process that's underway. So we are actively working with the codes, so with an open book, so that everyone can understand the revenue situation that we're looking at, and that we can then collectively as a group work out the best strategy to work through the remainder of the season, and obviously for the next calendar year for calendar 2021. So, again, love to have a simple answer, a 30-second answer, but like with a lot of things, once you scratch the surface of it, it's a little bit more complex than it perhaps may look. And hopefully next week, once we get the calendar confirmed after the consultation period required under the Act is completed, and we get the back to work protocol signed off by the government, and we know that we can go back to work, then pretty shortly after that, with the codes, we'll be able to confirm what kind of funding that will come out of that modelling.
Well, at least with the release of the calendar, we can start planning. At least we've got a door open that racing is going to resume again, Dean. So, what does the industry look like coming forward?
Yeah, look, we've already talked about it. It's not pretty out there at the moment, and our industry is very much in a similar, vacuum of information and direction that most, if not all, industries are in. So, it's not going to surprise anyone for me to say it's going to be tough for us over the next year. But I think we've got to firstly focus on some of the positive things and take each week as it comes. So this week and in our discussions today, there's already some positives that are starting to generate from the crisis. So we're getting close to a resume work. Hopefully that'll be tidied up very, very shortly. Then we can get back to racing, hopefully with a confirmed dates calendar. So they're positives. They're all positive. It gets us back doing what we love doing. It gets us back being able to have a bet on a New Zealand race. It gets us back being able to ride track work, attend a race meeting as a participant, train a stable hand, jockey scenario, and hopefully I'm obviously back to a full on-course experience. So there's going to be stages in that next year we've got to celebrate, milestones of success, because they will be there. The silver lining in all this is that there's never been a better opportunity for us as an industry to reshape our future. So what we've got to do is work together to focus on the hard decisions that we have to make together, and we all have to make those hard decisions, because there'll be hard decisions for clubs, for codes, for the TAB or RETA, whoever, and every participant that's out there. We're all making hard decisions, but collectively, if we work together, this is the best opportunity we have to make something out of a horrible part of the New Zealand racing history. But we've been through hard times before as an industry. We're a resolute bunch. I've been in the game all my life, and things are they've been better, no doubt. But I think, as I say, if we capitalise on the potential that we've got to accelerate some of the opportunities that we can get out of this, and the next few months will be critical for that, then look, as I say, I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, it's a crazy time for everyone. Appreciate you being so candid, Dean. And I understand just, you're in a pretty unenviable position, but a lot of work still to be done. If we can, we'd like to check in maybe again next week, but appreciate your time today.
No, as always, Aidan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time.